The stars disappeared first. Every telescope on Earth, from professional observatories to backyard amateur setups, caught the same impossible sight. A wall of metal ships stretched across the edge of the solar system, so vast that it blocked the light from distant stars. The Armada had arrived without warning, moving through space in complete silence until they wanted to be seen. Then came the message. It broadcast on every frequency humanity had ever used. Television screens flickered to life in the middle of the night. Radio stations went silent, then filled with an alien voice. Even old emergency broadcast systems that hadn't been used in decades suddenly activated. The voice spoke in perfect English, perfect Mandarin, perfect Arabic, perfect Korean, and every other human language simultaneously. We are the Galactic Council. For 10,000 years, we have maintained order across 1,200 star systems. Your species has been observed. Your expansion into space violates protocols established before your son was born. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Refuse and your species will be removed from existence. This is not negotiation. This is mercy. The message repeated for 6 hours straight, then stopped. The alien fleet waited in perfect formation at the edge of the solar system, making no further moves. They had delivered their ultimatum. Now they expected fear. In Seoul, inside the United Earth Government headquarters, Ambassador Jiwon sat at a curved table, surrounded by holographic displays. Each screen showed a different world leader, military commander, or chief scientist. Some faces showed panic, others showed rage. A few showed the blank expression of shock. Jiwon smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible at the corners of her mouth, but several people in the virtual meeting noticed it. Defense Minister Minho saw it from his office in Geneva. He understood what it meant and allowed himself a similar expression before returning to his neutral diplomatic face. "We need to respond," the European Premier said, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "We need to tell them we'll fight. We can't just surrender to—" "We will respond," Jiwon interrupted gently. "But not with threats we cannot back up. Not yet. Not yet." The Premier looked confused. "What does that mean?" President Hyeju appeared on the central screen, her face calm despite the crisis. She had been elected 3 years ago on a platform of unity and scientific advancement. Most people assumed she was an idealist. Very few knew the truth. "It means," Hyeju said clearly, "that we accept their invitation to negotiate. We appear cooperative. We buy time. Time for what?" someone asked. "Time to smile," Minho said cryptically. The meeting continued for 2 more hours, with contingency plans being laid out and civilian evacuation routes being prepared. The public needed to see their government taking action, making preparations, showing concern. That was important for morale. But the real work was happening in places the public had never heard of. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, Fleet Admiral Yuna walked through corridors that didn't exist on any map. The base had been carved into the red planet's interior over 30 years, expanded slowly and carefully, always hidden from orbital satellites and surface probes. Here humanity had built its true military force. Yuna stopped in front of a massive window overlooking a construction bay. Inside, ships floated in zero gravity, sleek and dark, their surfaces absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They looked nothing like Earth's public space vessels. These ships were built with technology the Galactic Council didn't know existed. "Status report," Yuna said to the officer beside her. "All stealth fleets ready for deployment. Quantum drives charged. Dark matter cannons operational. We can launch in 6 hours if needed." "Good, but we wait for the signal. Timing is everything." The officer nodded but asked the question that had been bothering everyone. "Admiral, what if this doesn't work? What if they're too strong?" Yuna turned to face him directly. "Then we die fighting with technology they can't comprehend, rather than living as slaves with technology they gave us. But it will work." Dr. Sunwoo confirmed it. Dr. Sunwoo was at that moment standing in a laboratory hidden inside an asteroid belt near Jupiter. Around him, screens displayed mathematical equations that would have seemed like magic to scientists from just 50 years ago. Quantum mechanics taken to their absolute extreme, manipulation of spacetime at scales the Galactic Council's physics couldn't detect. 50 years ago, humanity had discovered something that changed everything. An automated beacon, ancient beyond measure, hidden in the Kuiper Belt. It had been broadcasting for millions of years, waiting for someone intelligent enough to find it and wise enough to understand it. The message was simple. They are coming. They always come. They find species that might threaten them and destroy them first. Prepare in secret. Never let them know you are ready. This is how you survive. The beacon had been left by a species that existed long before the Galactic Council, a species that had been wiped out for becoming too advanced. But before they died, they scattered warnings across the galaxy, hoping someone would heed them. Humanity heeded them. For 50 years, Earth had prepared. They kept their public space program simple and obvious, launching traditional rockets, building predictable space stations, expanding to the Moon and Mars at a pace the galaxy would expect. But in secret, teams of scientists worked on the real technology, the quantum drives, the stealth systems, the weapons that could rewrite reality itself at small scales. It had required the cooperation of every nation on Earth. Old rivalries had to be set aside. Resources had to be pooled. The greatest minds of humanity had to work together in complete secrecy. It was the largest conspiracy in human history, and somehow impossibly it had held. Now, as the Galactic Council's fleet waited for humanity's surrender, thousands of humans across the solar system moved into position. Captain Seogen led stealth teams that infiltrated the alien fleet, using ships so small and quiet they were invisible to conventional sensors. They planted microscopic drones on every alien vessel, gathering data, learning weaknesses, mapping networks. Commander Tae-hyun ordered all visible military forces to stand down, making Earth look cooperative and weak. Weapon systems were publicly powered down. Defensive satellites were deactivated. To the Galactic Council's sensors, humanity looked like it was preparing to surrender. In truth, humanity was preparing to spring the most elaborate trap ever conceived. As the first day of the 72-hour deadline passed, Ambassador Ji-won sent a formal response to the Galactic Council. The message was polite, diplomatic, and perfectly crafted to sound like frightened cooperation. Earth requested time to organize an orderly surrender. Earth requested clarification on terms. Earth requested mercy for its civilians. And with every word, Ji-won smiled that same small smile, because humanity had learned something important from that ancient beacon. The Galactic Council had conquered hundreds of species over thousands of years. They had never lost. They had never even been challenged. And that made them arrogant. That made them predictable. That made them vulnerable. The Council expected fear. They expected surrender. They expected humanity to react like every other species had reacted when faced with overwhelming force. They had no idea what was really coming. The Council's Supreme Commander refused to accept defeat. Even surrounded, even outmatched, even with his empire crumbling around him, the crystalline being could not comprehend losing. For 1,000 years he had conquered worlds. He had destroyed civilizations. He had never retreated. He had never surrendered. The concept simply didn't exist in his understanding of reality. All ships, he broadcast on emergency channels, ignore previous orders. Full assault, maximum firepower. Destroy the human vessels at any cost. If we die, we take them with us. Admiral Yuna watched on her displays as the Council ships began charging their weapons for a desperate final attack. She felt no satisfaction, only a tired sadness. They were going to force her to kill them all. Admiral, her tactical officer said quietly, they're preparing to overload their reactors. If they all go critical simultaneously, the explosion could damage our ships. Could it? Yuna asked, theoretically. Our shields would hold, but the radiation pulse might affect the quantum field generators. Might? The officer paused, checking his calculations again. 5% chance of temporary disruption. Less than 1% chance of actual damage, Yuna sighed. Even in suicide, the Council was no real threat to Earth's technology. But she couldn't let them die like this. Not yet. There were still trials to be held. Still justice to be served. Still truths that needed to be spoken. Suppress their reactor cores, she ordered. Full quantum lock on all Council vessels. Across the fleet, Earth's ships activated another function of their impossible technology. The quantum fields that protected them expanded, reaching out to touch the Council vessels. When they made contact, the alien ship's power systems simply stopped working. Not damaged, not destroyed, just frozen in place. The nuclear reactions in their cores suspended in temporal stasis. The lights went out on every Council ship simultaneously. The Supreme Commander's hologram flickered and died as his flagship lost power. Emergency systems activated, providing minimal life support, but all weapons, engines, and communication systems were offline. The mighty Council fleet floated dead in space, completely helpless. Boarding teams, begin operations, Admiral Yuna ordered. Priority targets are command staff and war criminals identified from the archives. Standard rules of engagement apply. Minimum force necessary. Commander Taehyun led the first boarding party onto the Supreme Commander's flagship. His team moved through corridors lit only by emergency lights, past alien crew members who stared at the humans with expressions of shock and fear. The boarding teams were polite but firm, separating officers from enlisted crew, securing command centers, and establishing control. They found the Supreme Commander in his throne room, a massive chamber designed to intimidate visitors. The crystalline being sat motionless, his body color patterns showing something humans hadn't seen before. Defeat. Genuine, complete defeat. "You will be taken into custody," Taehyun informed him. "You will be held for trial. You will answer for crimes committed against hundreds of species over thousands of years. Do you understand?" The Supreme Commander's colors shifted to something that might have been bitter amusement. "Trial? You speak of justice as if such a thing exists in this universe. I did what was necessary to maintain order. I conquered because that is what strong species do to weak species. It is the natural law." "No," Taehyun replied firmly. "It's what tyrants do when no one is strong enough to stop them." But someone finally was. Across the galaxy, the news of the Council's defeat spread faster than light. On worlds that had been subjugated for centuries, populations rose up against their occupiers. The Council's forces, hearing their Supreme Commander had been defeated by primitive humans, lost all will to fight. Some surrendered, some fled. None resisted seriously. Captain Seojin coordinated Earth's response to the galactic uprising. His teams, still using quantum-shifted vessels that could be anywhere in minutes, appeared at crisis points across known space. They didn't come as conquerors. They came as liberators, helping species overthrow their council oppressors and establish their own governments. On a world called Takara, where the population had been enslaved for mining operations, Seojin watched as the last council garrison surrendered. The local people, insect-like beings with bioluminescent patterns on their carapaces, danced in the streets when they realized they were free. An elder approached Seojin, her light patterns showing gratitude. "Why?" she asked through a translator. "Why did Earth help us?" "What do you gain?" Seojin thought about the question carefully before answering. "My people were about to be enslaved too. We fought to save ourselves, but once we had the power to resist, we realized we had a responsibility to help others resist too. Freedom shouldn't belong to only the strong." Back on Earth, President Hyaju faced a different challenge. With the Council's military defeated, with their empire collapsing, with their crimes exposed, a question remained. What should humanity do with the Council leadership? What punishment fit 10,000 years of tyranny? Engineer Doyen had prepared something he called the Omega Solution. It was a weapon that existed only in quantum probability until the moment it was activated. Then it would simply erase the target from existence. Not kill them, not destroy them. Just remove them from reality as if they had never been. No pain, no suffering, just instant non-existence. It would be mercy compared to what they've done, Doyun explained to the Leadership Council. Clean, complete, final. Defense Minister Minho shook his head. It would also be murder. Execution without trial. We would become what we defeated. They deserve it, someone argued. The evidence is overwhelming. Why waste time with trials when we know they're guilty? Ambassador Jiwon spoke up, her voice calm but carrying authority. Because justice isn't about what people deserve. It's about who we choose to be. If we execute the Council leadership without trial, we tell the galaxy that might makes right. That whoever has the strongest weapons gets to decide who lives and dies. That's exactly what the Council believed. President Hyaju listened to the arguments for hours. Legal experts, military advisors, civilian representatives, and alien ambassadors from freed worlds all gave their opinions. Some wanted mercy, some wanted vengeance. Most wanted something in between. Finally, she made her decision. The Supreme Commander and 11 other Council leaders were brought to Earth in secure transport. They were held in comfortable but closely guarded facilities while preparations were made. not for execution, for trial. The first Galactic Justice Tribunal was established in Geneva in a building constructed specifically for this purpose. Judges were selected from dozens of species, including some who had suffered under council rule and some who had remained neutral. The proceedings would be broadcast across the entire galaxy, completely transparent. When the Supreme Commander was brought before the court, he stood with what dignity he could manage. His crystalline body had dulled since his capture, the colors less vibrant, but he still carried himself like someone who had commanded armies. The charges were read: genocide, slavery, crimes against sapient species. The list went on for 3 hours. "How do you plead?" the chief judge asked. The Supreme Commander looked at the faces surrounding him. Humans, aliens, species he had conquered, species he had tried to destroy, all of them staring at him with expressions ranging from hatred to pity. "I plead that I did what I believed necessary," he said finally. "I maintained order. I prevented chaos. If that is crime, then yes, I am guilty. But I do not apologize. I would do it again." The trial would last 6 months. Every piece of evidence would be examined. Every witness would be heard. Every argument would be considered. It would be messy and complicated and frustratingly slow, but it would be justice. Admiral Yuna, watching the proceedings from Mars, turned to Dr. Sunwoo beside her. Was this worth it? All the preparation, all the secrets, all the technology we developed. Was it worth it to capture them alive? Sunwoo considered the question carefully. If we had simply destroyed them, we would have proved their point. That the strong dominate the weak, that power determines right. By giving them a fair trial, we prove something different. That civilization means something. That justice means something. That mercy is strength, not weakness. Yuna smiled slightly. "When did you become a philosopher?" "When I realized the weapon I built could end civilizations. I had to believe it was being used for something better than that." Across Earth and throughout human space, life slowly returned to normal. The occupation had lasted only 3 days. The resistance had cost no human lives. It was the most successful military operation in history, and it had been won not through violence but through preparation, intelligence, and the willingness to smile while holding overwhelming power. But Commander Tae-hyun, watching the celebrations in Seoul, felt uneasy. He found President Hyeju at a quiet observation deck overlooking the city. "Something troubles you," Hyeju observed. "We won too easily," Tae-hyun said. "The Council ruled for 10,000 years. They conquered hundreds of worlds, and we defeated them in less than a week. Doesn't that seem wrong?" Hyeju nodded slowly. "It should trouble you. It troubles me too. We've become the most powerful military force in the galaxy. We have technology no one else can match. We have to be very careful about what we do with that power." President Hyeju appeared on every screen across the planet and broadcast into space on all frequencies. Her face was calm, almost serene, as she addressed both humanity and the Galactic Council simultaneously. "Supreme Commander, members of the Galactic Council, I am President Hyeju of the United Earth Government. I am speaking to you now to address your ultimatum and your terms of surrender." The Council's Supreme Commander materialized in holographic form, his crystalline body pulsing with colors that indicated amusement. He had heard thousands of surrender speeches over his long career. This would be no different. "You are wise to accept reality," the Supreme Commander said. "Speak your compliance and your species will be permitted to exist as servants of the Council." Hyeju smiled. It was the same smile Ambassador Jiwon had worn. The same smile that Defense Minister Minho had shown. The smile that had confused so many observers. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding," Hyeju said softly. "We weren't accepting your terms. We were being polite. You see, humanity has a tradition. When someone threatens us, we like to give them one chance to reconsider. We don't attack first. We don't strike without warning. We smile and we wait, and we hope they'll choose peace." The Supreme Commander's colors shifted to something that suggested irritation. "You speak nonsense. You have no military that could threaten the Council. You will surrender now, or I will order the bombardment of your largest city as demonstration." "You're right about one thing," Hyeju continued, ignoring the threat. "We don't have a military that could threaten you." "We have something much more effective than that." She paused, and her smile widened. "Show them." Across the solar system, things that hadn't existed a moment before suddenly did. The Council's sensors went insane. Alarms screamed on every ship. Officers stared at their displays in confusion and growing terror as hundreds of vessels appeared from nowhere. Not approaching from distant space, not decloaking, but simply existing where nothing had been seconds before. Admiral Una stood on the bridge of the ECS Horizon, humanity's flagship, as it materialized in the center of the Council's formation. Around her, officers worked with practiced efficiency at stations that controlled technology the Council couldn't comprehend. All ships reporting in, the communications officer said. Fleet deployment successful. Quantum anchors stable. Una looked at the main display, which showed the Council's armada now surrounded by Earth's true military. Open a channel to all Council vessels. Let them hear this, her voice broadcast to every alien ship. Attention Galactic Council forces. You are now completely surrounded by the United Earth Defense Fleet. Power down your weapons and prepare to receive boarding parties. Any hostile action will be met with immediate response. This is your only warning. The Council's Supreme Commander's colors shifted rapidly through patterns that indicated shock, rage, and disbelief. Impossible. You have no technology for this. Our sensors showed nothing. Your sensors showed what we wanted you to see, Admiral Una replied calmly. For 50 years we've been preparing for this moment. We knew you were coming. We knew what you would do, and we built everything we needed to stop you. On Earth, Commander Taehyun's forces suddenly stopped cooperating with the occupation. In coordinated actions across every city, human soldiers activated weapons that had been hidden in plain sight. The devices they'd been helping the aliens install turned out to be quantum field generators. When activated, they created barriers that trapped the alien forces in specific zones, cutting them off from their ships and each other. The insect-like soldiers tried to fight but found their weapons useless. The crystalline beings tried to phase through the barriers, but discovered the quantum fields disrupted their ability. The blue-skinned humanoids called for evacuation, but received no response from their ships in orbit. All occupation forces contained, Taehyun reported to command. 0 human casualties. Alien forces secured. In space, the Council's fleet tried to respond to the sudden appearance of Earth's ships. The Supreme Commander ordered an immediate attack. Thousands of energy weapons fired simultaneously, enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. None of the shots reached their targets. Around each Earth ship, space itself seemed to twist. The energy weapons simply stopped existing when they hit the quantum fields. Their energy dispersed across dimensions the Council's science couldn't access. It looked like the projectiles were hitting invisible walls and vanishing, but the reality was far more complex. Dr. Sunwoo watched from the Mars facility as his life's work performed flawlessly. Project Horizon had rewritten the rules of warfare, not through bigger guns or stronger shields, but through fundamental manipulation of reality itself at quantum scales. Their weapons are useless, he reported to anyone listening. The quantum fields are stable. We can maintain this indefinitely. The Supreme Commander, realizing his attack had failed completely, made a desperate decision. All ships prepare for warp jump. Retreat to... Too late for that, Admiral Una interrupted. She nodded to her weapons officer. Demonstration Alpha. Single target. One of the Council's massive dreadnoughts, a ship that had bombarded 100 worlds into submission, suddenly disappeared from its position. For a moment nothing happened. Then sensors detected it inside the sun's corona, its shields failing instantly in the impossible heat, the ship vaporizing in seconds. The human ship hadn't fired a visible weapon, hadn't launched a missile, had simply rewritten space-time around the target vessel and moved it several million kilometers in an instant. Every alien officer in the Council fleet understood what that meant. If Earth could teleport one ship into a star, they could teleport all of them. The entire armada was helpless. You were saying something about retreat? Admiral Una asked, her voice cold. Let me be clear. Your warp drives won't work. We're suppressing the quantum fields you use for faster-than-light travel. You're trapped here. Every single ship. Every single soldier. All at our mercy. Captain Seojin, still in his quantum-shifted vessel, watched as the Council's command network collapsed into chaos. Officers shouted contradictory orders. Ships broke formation trying to escape, only to discover Earth ships could move faster and more precisely than anything in the Council's arsenal. Some alien vessels tried to surrender. Others tried to fight. A few tried to self-destruct, but even that was prevented by the quantum suppression fields. It wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration of absolute technological superiority. The Supreme Commander's hologram flickered as he tried to understand what was happening. His species had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had crushed hundreds of civilizations. They had never encountered resistance they couldn't overcome. "This was impossible. What are you?" he asked. His voice transmitted to President Hyeju on Earth. Hyeju looked into the camera with an expression that mixed satisfaction with sadness. "We're the species you underestimated. We're the civilization you thought you could conquer. We're humanity, and we've been preparing for you for a very long time." She pressed a button and suddenly every screen in the galaxy lit up with a new broadcast. Not just Council space, but every species under Council rule. Every independent system. Every corner of civilization that could receive signals. Ambassador Jiwan appeared, standing in what looked like an archive. Behind her, holographic displays showed documents, video recordings, and data files. "People of the galaxy," Jiwan said clearly. "My name is Ambassador Jiwan of Earth. For 10,000 years, you've lived under Galactic Council rule. You've been told they maintain order. You've been told they protect civilization. Today I'm going to show you the truth." The screens changed, showing record after record of Council atrocities. Species enslaved, worlds bombarded, civilizations destroyed not for aggression or crime, but simply for developing technology the Council found threatening. The evidence was overwhelming and came directly from the Council's own archives, stolen by Captain Seojin's infiltration teams. "The Council doesn't maintain order," Jiwan continued. "They maintain dominance. They eliminate any species that might challenge them. They've done it hundreds of times. They came to Earth planning to do it to us, but we were ready." The broadcast showed Earth's fleet surrounding the helpless Council armada. It showed alien occupation forces contained and disarmed. It showed the technological superiority that had turned the tables so completely. "Today the Council's reign ends," Jiwan declared, "not because Earth seeks empire, but because the galaxy deserves freedom. We're offering every species under Council rule a choice. Join us in building something better, or remain neutral and independent. But the age of Council tyranny is over." The Supreme Commander watched his empire crumbling in real time. Species across the galaxy were already rebelling, inspired by Earth's example and armed with the truth of Council crimes. His fleet was captured. His occupation forces were prisoners. His authority was shattered. He had one question left: how? President Hyeju answered him. 50 years ago, we found a message left by a species you destroyed. They warned us you were coming. They told us to prepare in secret. They gave us hope that superior technology could be developed if we worked together. We did. 5 years had passed since the day Earth smiled at the Galactic Council and changed the galaxy forever. The trial of the Council leadership had concluded after 6 months of testimony. The Supreme Commander and 8 other high officials were found guilty of crimes against sapient species. 3 were acquitted due to lack of evidence for their specific actions. The guilty received sentences of lifetime imprisonment with the possibility of rehabilitation review after 50 years. They would live, but they would never command again. President Hyeju, now in her second term, stood at the window of her office looking at the stars. The view was different now. Humanity knew what was out there. Hundreds of species, thousands of worlds, an entire galaxy full of life and possibility, and Earth stood at the center of it, not as conqueror but as protector. It was a responsibility that kept her awake at night. Ambassador Jiwan entered the office carrying a data tablet. The new Galactic Federation Assembly is ready. Representatives from 83 species are gathered. They're waiting for your opening speech. Hyeju turned from the window. 83? I thought we invited over 200 species. We did. Some declined. Some are still deciding. Some are scared of us, honestly. They see what we did to the Council and wonder if we're just the next empire. Are we? Hyeju asked seriously. Jiwan met her eyes. That depends on what we do next. The assembly hall had been built on neutral ground, a space station positioned at the galactic center. The chamber was enormous, with seating arranged in concentric circles so that no species had a position of superiority over others. Humans sat among aliens, all equal, all with equal voice. Hyeju stood at the central podium, her image broadcast to all attendees and across the galaxy. 5 years ago, she began, the Galactic Council came to Earth with an ultimatum. Surrender or die. They expected us to be like every other species they had encountered. Fearful, weak, easy to conquer. She paused, letting the memory settle over the assembly. We weren't, and today, we stand together not because Earth defeated the Council, but because the Council's defeat revealed a truth. No species should rule others. No civilization has the right to dominate the galaxy. We are all equals, struggling to survive in an endless universe. Together we're stronger. Together we're safer. Together, we can build something better than empire. The speech continued for 20 minutes, outlining the principles of the new Galactic Federation. No member species could dominate others. Technology would be shared freely. Disputes would be resolved through negotiation and arbitration. Military forces would exist only for defense. Every species, no matter how small or primitive, would have equal voice in Federation decisions. It was idealistic. Some said naive. But after 10,000 years of Council tyranny, the galaxy was willing to try something different. Not everyone was happy with the new order. On the edges of known space, Captain Seojin hunted the remnants of Council loyalists who refused to accept defeat. These weren't military forces. They were terrorists, saboteurs, and war criminals fleeing justice. Seojin's ship, the CSS Shadow, tracked a group of former Council officers to an abandoned mining station in a system far from Federation space. His team moved through the station with practiced efficiency, their quantum-enhanced armor making them nearly invisible. They found the fugitives preparing a biological weapon intended to strike at Earth. The plan was desperate and probably wouldn't have worked, but Seojin couldn't take that chance. His team captured the conspirators without firing a shot, using quantum field restraints that paralyzed the targets instantly. Why? Seojin asked their leader, a blue-skinned humanoid who had commanded 3 sectors under the old Council. The war is over. The Council is gone. What do you gain from this? The alien looked at him with pure hatred. You destroyed everything we built. 10,000 years of order. You unleashed chaos on the galaxy. We're trying to restore civilization. You're trying to restore tyranny, Seojin corrected. There's a difference. Back on Earth, different problems were emerging. Dr. Sunwoo stood in his laboratory surrounded by medical equipment and neural scanners. The readings troubled him deeply. Show me again, he said to the test subject, a young pilot named Nari. Nari closed her eyes and concentrated. On the table in front of her, a small metal sphere began to float. Not lifted by any device or field generator. It simply floated, held aloft by Nari's thoughts. How long have you been able to do this? Sunwoo asked. 3 months, Nari replied, opening her eyes. The sphere dropped back to the table. It started small. I could feel the quantum fields around the ship during flight. Then I realized I could influence them slightly. Now I can do this. And you're not the only one, Sunwoo said quietly. I've documented 47 cases in the past year. All pilots. All people who work closely with quantum technology. The technology is changing us. He pulled up brain scans showing neural pathways that shouldn't exist. Human brains were adapting to perceive and manipulate quantum fields directly. Evolution in real time. Accelerated by constant exposure to technology that operated at the edge of reality. Is it dangerous? Nari asked. I don't know, Sunwoo admitted. You're not sick. Your abilities don't seem to be hurting you. But you're becoming something different than baseline human. We don't know what the long-term effects will be. The news spread quickly. Some people were excited, seeing it as the next step in human evolution. Others were terrified, viewing it as mutation or contamination. Debates raged about whether quantum technology should be restricted, whether affected individuals should be quarantined, whether humanity should abandon the technology that had saved them. Admiral Yuna addressed a packed assembly in the UN building. We cannot put this genie back in the bottle. Quantum technology is how we survived. It's how we freed the galaxy. Abandoning it would leave us vulnerable. But we need to study these changes carefully and ensure people affected by them receive proper support. What if they become dangerous? Someone asked from the crowd. What if these quantum-sensitive people decide they're superior to normal humans? Then we'll deal with it, Yuna said firmly. But we don't condemn people for things they haven't done. We don't punish people for being different. If we do that, we become no better than the Council. In the midst of all this change and uncertainty, Defense Minister Minho found himself at a small ceremony in his hometown. The local school had been renamed the Galactic Unity Academy. teaching human and alien children together. He watched as kids from Earth played with young aliens from dozens of species, all of them laughing and learning without any awareness of old prejudices or fears. A Takaran child, the insect-like species Captain Seojin had helped liberate, approached him shyly. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered in a way the translator interpreted as curiosity. "Are you really one of the people who defeated the council?" she asked. Minho knelt to her level. "I helped, yes. Many people helped. Were you scared?" "Terrified," Minho admitted. "But we did it anyway. That's what courage is. Not being unafraid but doing what's right even when you're afraid." The child's lights brightened. "I want to be brave like that." "Then study hard, be kind to others, and stand up for what's right. That's how you become brave." As the child ran back to her friends, Minho felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, genuine hope that maybe they hadn't made a mistake. Maybe the galaxy could be better. 20 years after the council's defeat, an elderly Minho sat in a garden with his granddaughter. She was 7 years old, curious about everything, and currently fascinated by the stars visible in the evening sky. "Grandpa," she asked, "is it true you fought aliens?" "Not exactly," Minho replied. "I helped prepare for a fight, but when the time came, we didn't really fight. We just showed them we could, and that was enough." "I don't understand." Minho thought about how to explain it to a 7-year-old. "A long time ago, very powerful aliens came to Earth. They told us we had to surrender. They thought we were weak. But we weren't weak. We were just quiet. We had been preparing for a long time. What did you do?" We smiled. "You smiled?" His granddaughter looked confused. "That doesn't sound scary." "It wasn't meant to be scary. It was meant to be true. We smiled because we knew something the aliens didn't know. We knew we were ready. We knew we were strong. And we knew that we didn't want to fight if we didn't have to." "Did you have to fight?" "A little bit, but not much. Once they saw we were strong, they stopped trying to hurt us." His granddaughter thought about this for a while, looking at the stars. "Are there still bad aliens out there?" "Some," Minho admitted. "But there are also good aliens. Lots of them. They're our friends now. You go to school with some of them." "I know. Tikla is my best friend. She's from Takara." Minho smiled, remembering standing in Takara's streets when they were liberated. "That's wonderful. You know, when I was young, I never thought humans and Takarans would be friends. I never thought we'd have alien friends at all. Why not? Because I didn't know it was possible. But then we learned that being different doesn't mean being enemies. It just means being different." "Grandpa?" his granddaughter asked after another pause. "Why did you smile when the aliens came? Why weren't you scared?" Minho looked at her seriously, wanting to give an answer she would understand. The Council's ships entered Earth's atmosphere on the second day. They came in formations that blotted out the sun, descending over major cities like metal clouds. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Cairo, Sydney. Every continent received its share of occupation forces. The aliens didn't ask permission. They simply arrived and began establishing control points. Commander Taehyun stood on a rooftop in Seoul, watching the massive vessels settle over the city. His military uniform felt strange now, almost like a costume. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to order his troops to open fire, to resist. But his orders were clear. Cooperate. Look weak. Let them think they've already won. "All units maintain stand-down protocols," he said into his communicator. "Offer no resistance. Assist with whatever they require." Around the city, human soldiers helped the alien occupation forces set up barricades and checkpoints. They answered questions. They provided maps and building layouts. They acted like defeated people helping their conquerors, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. The aliens were strange to look at. The Council had sent 3 different species to Earth. The first looked like massive insects, standing nearly 3 meters tall on 6 legs, with compound eyes that reflected the city lights. The second appeared almost like walking crystals, their bodies transparent and geometric, communicating through bursts of colored light. The third were the most humanoid, but their skin was dark blue and their heads had tentacles instead of hair. They treated humans with casual contempt, the way someone might treat a pet that had misbehaved. Not cruel exactly, but dismissive. Like humanity wasn't worth taking seriously. That was exactly what Earth wanted them to think. High above the planet, in a small ship that existed in a quantum state between dimensions, Captain Seojin monitored the data flowing in from thousands of microscopic drones. Each drone was smaller than a grain of sand, impossible to detect with the Council's technology, and each one sent back detailed information about the alien ships. Their shield harmonics are consistent, Seojin reported to Admiral Yuna on Mars. No variations between vessels. They all use the same frequency modulation. Which means, Yuna asked, though she already knew. Which means if we can break one shield, we can break all of them simultaneously. They've never needed to vary their defenses because nothing has ever penetrated them. Arrogance, Yuna said softly. Catalog everything. We need complete data before we move. On Earth's surface, the Council's Supreme Commander made his first public appearance. The crystalline being that had conquered 847 worlds over a 1,000-year military career materialized in holographic form above every major city simultaneously. When he spoke, his voice was translated into all human languages, but the tone was unmistakable. Superiority. Absolute confidence. People of Earth, your surrender has been accepted. The terms are as follows. All weapons will be dismantled within 1 week. All space vessels will be grounded permanently. 30% of your adult population will be selected for labor service across Council territories. Your species will undergo genetic modification to reduce aggressive tendencies. Compliance is not optional. Resistance will result in the extermination of entire cities. You have been conquered. Accept this reality. The hologram faded, leaving billions of humans staring at empty sky. In the UN headquarters, President Hyeju watched the broadcast with Ambassador Ji-won and Defense Minister Min-ho. None of them looked worried. If anything, they looked almost satisfied. 30%, Min-ho said quietly. They're actually demanding slavery. It makes it easier, Ji-won replied. No moral ambiguity. No question about whether we're the aggressors. They've shown the galaxy exactly what they are. Are we recording everything? Hyeju asked. Every transmission, every order, every casual act of cruelty. Min-ho confirmed. When this is over, the galaxy will see what the Council really is. If this works, someone said from across the room. Hyeju turned to face the speaker, a young aide who looked terrified. The president's expression softened. It will work, but your fear is valid. What we're attempting has never been done before. The Council has ruled for 10,000 years. They've never lost. They've never even been challenged. But that's also their weakness. How is that a weakness? Because, Ji-won said, they don't know how to lose. They don't have contingency plans for defeat. They don't even have a concept of defeat. And that makes them predictable. Far from Earth on Mars, Dr. Sunwoo made the final calculations for Project Horizon. The name was deliberately bland. Like so many secret military projects throughout history, it disguised what was actually the most powerful weapon system ever conceived by any species in the galaxy. Project Horizon wasn't a bomb or a gun. It was something far more elegant and far more terrifying. It was a network of quantum processors that could temporarily rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas of space. Not permanently, not over large distances, but enough to make conventional warfare obsolete. A ship protected by quantum-shifted space couldn't be hit by normal weapons because the weapons would simply stop existing when they crossed the boundary. A projectile fired from a quantum-enhanced cannon could teleport through shields because it never technically passed through them. It was physics taken to its most extreme conclusion, and it required computational power that shouldn't have been possible. But humanity had built it anyway. Final test complete, Sunwoo reported to the Joint Chiefs. All systems operational. We can deploy on your order. Not yet, Admiral Yuna said. They need to commit more forces. We need them confident. We need them certain of victory. The Council obliged perfectly. Over the next 24 hours, they sent more ships to Earth. Not because they needed them for the occupation, but because they wanted to show off. They wanted humanity and the rest of the galaxy to see the massive fleet that had conquered Earth. It was a demonstration of power, a reminder to other species of what happened when you challenged the Council. Every ship that arrived was immediately infiltrated by Seojin's microscopic drones. Every communication was intercepted and decoded. Every weapon system was analyzed and catalogued. The Council thought they were showing strength. In reality, they were giving humanity everything needed to destroy them. In cities across Earth, humans played their roles perfectly. Some protested peacefully and were arrested by alien forces, making excellent footage for the galactic broadcasts. Some cooperated enthusiastically, looking like collaborators. Most just looked defeated, going about their lives under occupation with quiet desperation. It was all an act. Every human on Earth knew the truth. The governments had made sure of it. Secret messages, coded broadcasts, whispered words passed from person to person. Every citizen knew that this was temporary. Every citizen knew that humanity had a plan. The hard part was waiting. Commander Taehyun spent his days helping alien forces set up their occupation infrastructure, answering questions, providing assistance. At night, he reviewed tactical data with his actual military command, planning the counterattack down to the second. The contradiction was maddening, but necessary. On the third day, the Council made their biggest mistake. They brought their Supreme Commander's flagship into orbit around Earth. The vessel was enormous, larger than Earth's moon, a mobile fortress that served as both military headquarters and symbol of Council power. It had led the conquest of hundreds of worlds. Now it sat in orbit, perfectly positioned, completely vulnerable, and absolutely certain of its safety. In her office, Ambassador Ji-won received a message from Mars. Just 2 words: ready now. She looked at President Hyeju, who nodded once. Ji-won smiled again, that same small smile that had puzzled so many people. She opened a secure channel to every military commander, every ship captain, every scientist involved in the plan. 72 hours have passed, she said quietly. It's time to show them why humanity smiled.